especially focusing on marketing authorization. And when you look at marketing authorization, the initial point at which you bring products into the country, and then ultimately by bringing those products into the country, you're able to trade, you're able to serve clients that are depending on your products being available in that market for whatever that could be. So on that account, I'll start by bringing up my slides. And I'll have this session structured in two parts. Confirm you can see my screen. Can you see my screen? Somebody unmute and let me know. Okay. I'm projecting my PowerPoints. I don't know what's happening. The network keeps dropping, but I can hope you can hear me and see the screen. So from an introductory level, I'll just give you guys a brief overview about what we do as African Pharmaceutical Network, but also getting you to understand these processes that we go through. Then to give an overview of where we are, I'll give you the overview of where we are as African Pharmaceutical Network, the work that we do and everything. I'll do an introduction of the regulatory landscape of the regulatory landscape in Uganda. Then the next slide I'll be talking about, the next part that I'll be talking about, I'll take you through some key questions. And this kind of conversation is part of a process that we're going through, especially in kind of contextualizing regulatory intelligence across different African markets, but putting it to perspective with regards to what process are we dealing with? How is it currently being done? What improvements can be made? But also, most importantly, if you're intending to bring products into the market, what pathways are available for you to bring your products into the market? So that one will take the different, instead of working through the slides, I'll take you through our document, guidance document, which is more of our regulatory intelligence dashboard and the database that we're building and we'll be making available to different stakeholders who are interacting and engaging with us, but also using our solutions and our services. Then once we finish that, I'll get to the point where you can ask questions, we can answer them, but also be able to see what are the follow-up steps and how do we engage moving forward. So with that said, I would just be keen to let you know, as African Pharmaceutical Network, we started our operations in 2020. That was the COVID year, and the essence of it was to bring together a platform to facilitate conversations, knowledge sharing, and policy shaping towards ensuring that we strengthen the pharmaceutical and life science industry in Africa. And that was grounded by the virtue that, one, we have a relatively young life science industry. There's a growing threat of global health challenges, including some of the key contending issues that we're dealing with the challenges in the Strait of Hormuz. Supplies are disrupted. These are contentious issues that we need to deal with, from a supply chain disruption affecting global health and access to health products. On the other end, we are dealing with issues on disease outbreaks, Ebola virus in Uganda and partially DRC to the substantial level. And therefore, these are issues that we need to address. The question is, how do we build a robust ecosystem that is able to predict, prevent, and when they do occur, respond to them in a robust way that keeps people healthy and safe where they need to be? Everybody has been working in their silos, and we're trying to bridge that gap. And the last piece is being that platform to facilitate those conversations, but also to unlock value where people need that value. So our mission as an organization is to ensure there's reliability and access to safe, effective, quality health products and technologies through strategic investment in workforce development, business ecosystem support, and policy shaping interventions. If we do that and we ensure there's a healthy and productive population in Africa, we will have succeeded in whatever we're doing. In terms of the service streams that we have 4 specific service streams. Our training institute for the training services that we offer, regulatory support services, and one of the aspects and actually one of the products is the regulatory intelligence that I'm telling you guys about, and also some of the key insights that I'll be sharing from the material that we already have. Then you have business ecosystem from market research, market access, intelligence support from a commercial standpoint. And the last piece is working with government to shape the policy landscape in the ecosystem. So grounded on that, when we go to the key courses in training program that we offer, we have 5 professional courses: regulatory affairs, pharmacovigilance and patient safety, pharmaceutical supply chain management, medical affairs, and product management in life science industry. These are 5 courses, and actually our last cohort for the year starting in August, except for supply chain that will be starting in September. So whoever is interested, feel free to enroll, feel free to engage and take up our training programs. So with that said, probably other request is Wendy, where you are, you can share some of the links to our website so that whoever is interested can get more information about that. And that would be a good opportunity to just learn about the different products that we have and also the services that we have. So with that said, I'll go to the specifics of the conversation that we are to have today. And that is understanding regulatory processes in Uganda with focus on marketing authorization applications. So to set the context, one key question that comes in is why marketing authorization? Why must you get to register your product when you get into the market? And I'm talking about this mostly for either somebody in the industry who is keen on understanding why these requirements exist, or somebody who is yet to get into the industry and you are keen on understanding regulatory affairs as a landscape and as a domain of practice. The essence of it is every country has an obligation and every government has an obligation to guarantee health and well-being of their population and their people. And if that is going to happen, the governments must put in measures to guarantee that if you are going to use any health products and technologies in any market, it must be safe, it must be effective, and it must be of the right quality. And if that is going to happen, then they have to put in place regulatory processes and procedures that will guarantee that. On the other end, we look at it in terms of industry being able to, with an intent, commercial interest, I would say you want to sell your products, you must be compliant with the regulatory requirements in the country where you expect to bring your product. So then that is one of the parts piece. A market requirement, access requirement for you to get it. So you have to comply with that. And two, regulatory compliance becomes a competitive advantage. When your product is approved, another person's product is not approved, you will be able to get an access to a market that they don't have access to just by the virtue that you've already met the regulatory requirements. So that is a critical part. So in guaranteeing that oversight from a government standpoint, the government's putting in place different regulatory processes will put in place a marketing authorization application so that before the product even comes into the country, it must comply with the requirements and with the standards of what is expected. In the Ugandan landscape, we have the National Drug and Health Products Authority, the act that was actually reviewed and amended 2026, it was signed in April. And the regulatory authority is the National Drug Authority. And for the function that I'm talking about, the different regulatory processes and activities, marketing authorization becomes the first, clinical trial application for those who are conducting clinical studies, post-approval changes, we normally term them as variations in medicines. But also when we talk about medical devices, we'll talk about them as change notifications or amendments to the different respective products. So therefore, then after the approval, we have to go for amendments or change notifications. Then we have promotional materials that must be approved to ensure that your promotional activities are compliant with what the requirements in the market are. We have post-market surveillance. We have pharmacovigilance, good manufacturing licensing, that is more permission of people to produce products and also to bring products into the market. Distribution, wholesaling, retailing, importing and exporting of medicines for trade purposes. All these processes will be regulated. But when we talk about the regulatory marketing authorization specifically, this is the point when I switch from the slides and get us back on the Word document, the regulatory intelligence database that we are building that I'm actually keen on taking you through to see what are the processes and what are the key provisions. In this case, I focused on small molecules for this particular session. And it is more in a Q&A format, so let me know when you can see it. Wendy, help me now confirm you can see it.
Yes, we can see it, David.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. So when I look at it in terms of requirements, when you look at understanding the process, the first thing that you'll be asking yourself, if I am intending to bring a product into the country and register it in Uganda, what are the requirements? So conventionally, we all understand we have the International Council on Harmonization of Requirements for pharmaceutical product registration. So you'll need your dossier. But before you get to the dossier, which is the technical document, there are some administrative and operational requirements that do fall in place. So in Uganda, for you to register a product, one of the requirements is you must have a local technical representative. By default, the Ugandan government, through the National Drug Authority, defines the local technical representative as a legally registered company authorized by the National Drug Authority in Uganda to deal in medicinal products, that is, to import, to distribute, to sell in the country. So they must be a company, it must be a company that is legally permitted to do all that trade. And once you're appointing a local technical representative, you have to notify the National Drug Authority by submitting a letter of appointment, which is supported by an original copy of a power of attorney. And the power of attorney becomes the documentation to ascertain that you've fulfilled that requirement. And the power of attorney shall also be notarized in the country of origin. For example, if I'm based in Nairobi, Kenya, I'm manufacturing my medicine in Kenya, and I want to appoint a local technical representative in Uganda, I will identify the company, write a letter of appointment, and then the power of attorney, which is the legal document confirming that appointment, which is to be registered by the different governments from a legal standpoint, must be notarized in our country of origin, which is now in Kenya, with either the Attorney General's office or through the Embassy of Uganda, so that it's something that is actually validated. We've legally entered that agreement. Then these will now be registered with the Registrar of Companies in Uganda. If it is not registered by the Registrar of Companies, that appointment is invalid. That is important to take note of. For local companies, the manufacturer can be the same as the applicant. And in that case, you don't need to have a local technical representative in that case. Currently, there is a switch, and actually the applications for new product registration is happening through the online portal, the information regulatory management information system. That is the IRIM system that the Uganda government has put in place. For the dossier section that we're talking about, is Module 1 to Module 5. Module 1 is administrative information. Module 2, we're talking about summaries. 3, chemistry, manufacturing, and controls. Module 4, non-clinical study reports. Module 5, clinical study reports. Conventionally, if you're having a generic product, Module 4 is normally exempted. And for Module 5, you need only literature reference materials looking at the use of the product in clinical settings and whether there are any studies that have been performed. And that is important. When you go to the specifics of the information that will be in the different modules, and after this, I'll recommend you have a look at the website, NDA, National Drug Authority website, to have an overview of what the guidelines will look at in terms of information that you need to present. So in Module 1, you need all these information. I'll mention specific ones that are really important. Currently, there's a move towards having reliance mechanisms across the region and even in Uganda as a country. And the reliance procedures and processes in terms of how they consider it is that if the product has been registered with a stringent regulatory authority, now being phased out to be WHO listed authorities, then they would be able to expedite that process. Conventionally, at the moment, they normally talk about 90 calendar days for you to get an approval if your product is going through the abridged pathways, especially if it's either WHO pre-qualified, Swiss Medic, MAG HP, it is an EU medicine listed, the EU Medicines for All, M for All initiative, or it is part of these joint assessment procedures. Once you get the recommendation, it should be registered in an expedited way. So what do you need to demonstrate there? You need to indicate whether the regulatory status of the product in the respective countries. Countries where it's registered in East Africa, in the stringent regulatory authorities, or whether it has been submitted. And if submitted, what is the status of that submission in the country? This one can be submitted as a tabular format, indicating the status of the different one. If there are evaluation report, this would be expected. And if you share evaluation reports, you're already going the expedited pathway, which is amazing. But in the event you do not have evaluation reports, it will then have to go through the routine procedure. So that is another part that we need to take note of. Then other than that, and this is something that is unique to Uganda. Most other new market product applications in other countries, Normally, there's not much of a specific explicit request on pediatric development program. And this is a pain point. I'm not looking at it only from a Uganda standpoint, but it has been a pain point across the entire industry, across the continent, but I would say globally as well. Most developments do not consider pediatric formulation, leak formulas, and therefore there has been and there is an opportunity for that to happen. So in their case, they normally ask whether there's a pediatric development program. Either you have a pediatric formulation of the medicine that you're registering, or you have a plan to develop one, or there's anything that is happening with regard to how can be used in pediatric populations if you have any of such provisions. So that is a requirement that they do have. Then you have product samples. When we talk about product samples, is looking at it from you giving samples for every regulatory evaluation. Normally, at the point of registration, the National Drug Authority will request for 3 commercial packs of the samples. When you send the 3 to the local technical representative, they are required to remain with one, retain one, and submit proof. That is to guarantee that subsequently, in case there's an issue that has been noted by the regulator, and they're asking about the product that was submitted, your local technical representative has a sample that is available for verification and proof of that. Module 2, that is the standard, the ICH, and I recommend we review the ICH guidelines, modules 3 and module 4. That is important. So 3 commercial sample packs, I've already mentioned that. And then in case of anything, the NDA is still permitted and allowed to request for additional samples where necessary. And if the regulator is not satisfied with the information that you've submitted, they are also permitted to send letters for request for additional information. And that additional information need to be submitted within 6 months from the date of issue. And in that cycle, there are always two provisions. You can be asked queries twice. If for the second time, if you don't respond to the queries in a satisfactory way, the regulator then will stop the review, the process, and ultimately then you have to restart the process afresh if you need to get the product registered. So it becomes a new application. So that is important. And when you ask yourself, then the question is, sometimes people talk about, I have one product that I need to submit it as different formulation, different packs and all that. In Uganda, there's a clear criteria on how products will be evaluated, whether you're making a single application, then that will be extended, or each of them will be evaluated as individual entities. If you have individual dosage form for a particular medicine, different dosage forms will be treated as separate applications. If you have a change in the active pharmaceutical ingredient of a product, those will be considered as separate applications. For tablets, capsules, and suppositories and lozenges, generally, we are looking at them as solid dosage forms, different pack sizes of exactly the same strength and formulation. For example, you have a pack of 10 tablets, a pack of 30 tablets, a pack of 60, 90, and 100, then those would be considered as the same product. The only thing that is changing is the pack size. If you have different strengths and different formulations, those are considered separate. And different strength is, one of them is 100 milligrams, another one is 200 or 300 milligrams of a different product, the same product but different strength. Those are 2 different products. I would give a case example here. Metformin 500 milligrams, metformin 850 milligrams, and metformin 1 gram. Those are considered as different strength and different products, and therefore then there'll be different product. If you have uncoated tablets of the same strength and formulation, they are considered separate. And the reason is, with the coating, there's an impact on the dissolution profile of that medicine. And if that dissolution profile is impacted in any way, then some of them might require bioequivalent studies, some might not, depending on how the formulation is, which means the data requirements are different and varied. They will be considered 2 different ones. When you go to liquid dosage forms, syrups, liquid solutions, and all that, excluding parenteral specifically, if they have different container sizes of the same strength and same formulation, consider the same. For example, 150 milligrams per ml, and you have a volume of 60 ml, 100 and 150 ml. That is the same product, because at any one point, if I take 5 ml to administer to a patient, then they'll be considered to be taking equivalent dose of the same of what they would have gotten if they bought the smaller pack size. Then when you have the same container size but different strength, and I normally look at this from the sense that you have a product that is not, let's say, for example, these antibiotics, normally amoxiclav. the syrup or the suspension powder for administration is indicating it is 125 milligrams per ml. Then the other one will be the same size, but it is now 250 milligrams per ml, denoting that you have a higher concentration of the antibiotic in that formulation. Those are considered different ones. When you go to the injectables, when you have ampoule single dose vial containing identical solution, same strength, but different volumes, these are for injection. The volume difference makes them different total doses. And therefore, then those are separate products. Solutions of different strengths, it's 10 milligrams per ml, the other one is 20 milligrams per ml, those are different. Dry powder or crystal with different formulation, different mass, still will be considered different. When they are the same respective masses in terms of concentration, same. If you were using it in a prefilled disposable syringe or whatever it is, but with the same strength and same volume of liquid, those are considered the same. It might be in an ampoule, single dose vials, or a prefilled disposable syringe or a cartridge, but the concentration is the same. The liquid that is used is the same volume. Everything is the same. Dental cartridges will be considered same. Water, any ampoule that is containing water for injection but of different volumes, those are considered the same because the water for injection is not an active ingredient. Then we have special ampoules for dry powder and water for injections that are contained in the same unit but intended for mixing to the time of injection. So some of them might have a water for injection, some will not have a water for injection. They'll be considered the same because water for injection can be bought as a separate pack on its own to be used in the product. Then you have multi-dose vials containing different volumes of the same strength and formulation with the same dosage schedule, the same product. So these are some of the things that are coming in terms of whether they're same or not. And this table is also provided in the guidelines for registration of products in Uganda. So that is available for you. Uganda does not request for samples for analysis unless there is a specific need at the moment. Currently, they do not request. And if they were to request for analysis, normally it is after the product has been registered, conventionally from my experience and from my industry experience. And the other piece would be what regulatory procedures are applicable for the registration of medicines. We have different procedures. The first one is the full review procedure. You submit the whole dossier module 1 to module 5 or only module 1 to 5 minus 4 for generic products. And then in that case, they review the dossier, make requests for additional information if necessary, with a commitment that your application will be approved within 24 months. In practice, the evaluation timelines might extend up to 3 years. Disclaimer here. Normally, that is dependent on the quality of the dossier that was submitted. If you fulfilled all the requirements, Uganda is a relatively efficient regulatory agency from NDA level, and therefore 24 months might be fulfilled and actually get your product approved. So that is one of the key things to take note of. Then when you go to the abbreviated procedures, does not have a guidelines specifically for abbreviated procedures and reliance. But in practice, the regulator has actually been open to use regulatory procedures that are alternative ones. I would say the abbreviated ones. One, WHO CRP, the Collaborative Registration Procedure, WHO PQ, Swiss Medic Marketing Authorization for Global Health Programs, and the East Africa Community Medicines Regulatory Harmonization. So those are processes that have already adopted. Normally, the procedure would take on average 6 to 9 months for maximum in most cases, but a deal, they normally say in your conversation with them, should be approved in 6 months. In your case, this is now advice specifically for anybody who is looking at it. In case you want to get to engage with the Uganda NDA for registration through the abbreviated procedures, recommendation, engage them before you start the application process. Very important. If you want to have a pre-submission meeting, is it permitted with Uganda NDA? Definitely, but you have to make that request directly to the regulatory authority, that's the NDA. And once you've made that request, you can now have a follow-up planning. Sometimes when you make a request on email, it might not be responded to immediately. So you have an opportunity to engage through your local technical representative if you're not in the country. If you're in the country, you can make a visit to NDA and make plans on when to have the meeting where necessary. If it is confirmed you're having a meeting, pre-submission meetings succeed based on planning. The recommendation is make the request for the meeting and be clear on what agenda and what guidance you need from them. That will then inform them on who to bring into the conversation and how to coordinate the meeting when you're there. When you're preparing, have clear asks and have your key concerns and pain points where you have a problem. During the meeting, it is your responsibility because it is you who has set the agenda. It's you who has requested for the meeting. Set the tone for the meeting, present and get to the discussion, highlighting one question at a time so that you get specific guidance on that item. Sometimes we get to a situation where somebody presents a 30-slide presentation, then the regulator actually maybe missed out on some of them. When you go back home and make an application without the specifics, you're missing out because then the query will be asked. And when the query is asked and you didn't know how to respond to it, that is extra time in the review process. After the meeting, do an email or write an email or write and send the minutes to them, whether physically or not. There, then you are capturing evidence of the discussion that was shared, guidance provided, and what you intend to do, how you intend to make an application, or whatever regulatory activity that you're doing. I just indicated we are a scientific office, and in case somebody needs any support, we'll be more than glad to support for those who are here, and we'll see how that would work. In terms of regulatory fees, small molecules, foreign medicines, $2,000. Local companies pay $200 for registration. And if you want to register your product, one of the key things that is required is that you must have GMP compliant facilities, GMP inspection beyond submitting the dossier and following the process. So if you're going to make an application, you apply for GMP, there's an application letter, filled and signed application form, proof of payment of GMP, site master file, current manufacturing license, current GMP certificate if you're a foreign country, because you must demonstrate that you're already allowed to manufacture in the country of origin. You cannot bring a product to another country when in the country where you're operating, you're not allowed to produce and sell a product. Then copy of recent GMP inspection report if you've been inspected. And the essence of it is to find out what were the findings of that inspection, what were the gaps, and what is the room for improvement. If there has been any warning letter, you need to be able to share that. If you had corrective and preventive actions, how we implemented them, and you need to give a report of that implementation. Product quality reviews needed. Confirmation by the senior quality assurance representative that a full self-inspection or external audit dedicated to the products that you are looking at bringing to the market has been performed and all matters dealt with. That is an internal assurance system that you need to communicate to the regulator. Then you have the quality manual, completed batch manufacturing records, list of any recalls, aseptic validation report, contract or agreement between the finished pharmaceutical product manufacturer and the API manufacturer. And then with that, once you've submitted the documentation, you including the proof of payment, you need to make the payment. There's a fee schedule that is in Uganda, and I think this is something that we need to look at. Highest cost for regulatory fees with GMP inspection is 8,000 USD. Locally within EAC is 5,000 USD. Within Africa, but outside the East Africa community, 6,000 USD. That is for the main manufacturing site. Additional sites will be varied from 1,000 per line to 1,500 per line and 2,000 in outside of the continent. And those fees are already available in the guidelines. So I don't want to go through the fees. Do we have any unique requirements that might be arising? I would say some requirements are going to emerge following the new law that has been passed, especially in terms of formalizing the different requirements that have not been in place. What I foresee coming is a guideline for reliance and abbreviated procedures that would be coming in. I'm sure there is need for that. And also guidance on how to engage with the regulator. Because at the moment, even for the scientific meetings where you need to get advice, there hasn't been a proper, robust process in place. And if that happens, then it will streamline ways of engaging with industry, but also how we can support on where the processes need to be moved forward. So that is where the situation is. And I would say that gives an overview of where the regulatory process for marketing authorization, especially for small molecules, covers. The same would apply for other medicines that we have. Medical device regulation would be a subsequent one. I'll be able to facilitate that session, but we'll schedule it as we move forward. With that said, I come to the end of that brief presentation for today, but I would be keen to hear if there's any questions, any concern that you guys might be having for me. So I pause at that level. You're all permitted to unmute your microphone, speak to me. You can type in the chat if you're not in a position to speak. so that we can respond to your questions and your concerns. Anyone with a question or comment? Yes. So it must be a licensed pharmacy. And normally one of the key requirements, if it's just a normal company, you can have a pharmacist in place who will be the responsible company pharmacist. So that is one of the key requirements. Yes. Thank you so much for that, Barbara. Great. Anybody else? Any questions? Any comments? Are we okay? I assume silence means we're all okay. For the Ugandan community, we'll be having our dinner next week on Friday at the main Pasha Hotel. So whoever is available, we'd be glad to host you. Personally, I'll be traveling to Uganda, so I'll be there. I'd be glad to meet, have conversation, and see what are the opportunities where we could collaboratively support one another, but also support access to health products and technologies within the country, but also within the region and the continent of Africa. So those who will be able to join, please do reach out to me. If not, reach out to my colleague who is supporting our operation from Uganda, Hilary, who is in the call with us. So in case of anything, we can keep engaging and we can have this conversation as we move forward. That is it from me. And I'll take a pause here. Unless somebody has something, I'll wish you a great weekend ahead and a lovely evening. Great. Thank you. Have a good one, everyone.